Welcome to the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, Wealth Advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. Today on the show, we chat with JT Starzecki, Chief Marketing Officer for a London-based fertilizer company called Sirius Minerals, who specializes in the mining and extraction of an ore called polyhalite. He shares the work he's doing to help make Sirius a legitimate contender in the global fertilizer market. Along the way, he explains the process of drilling a 37-kilometer tunnel through a national park in northern England and how we properly toast someone when you're doing business in China. JT, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, Joe, my pleasure.
Great. So let's start. You are the Chief Marketing Officer now at Sirius Minerals.
Correct. So Sirius Minerals is an exploration company. Well, I guess the origins are that it's an exploration company. And years ago, we really started to hone in on what we were going to do from a business architecture, business structure perspective. And we ended up not stumbling on, but exploring and discovering a deposit of a mineral that we realized very quickly could be used as a bulk source of fertilizer, polyhalite. And so the company then started to structure itself around just being less of a scattergun exploration organization that wants to go chase a project here or a project there all over the globe, and specifically focused on building ourselves into a global fertilizer business.
I'm curious, so I can get a better understanding, polyhalite. What's the history behind that? Has it been around for a while? You mentioned there's not too many people distributing it commercially. What's the story behind the polyhalite?
Sure, that's a good question. And so when you look at what the products, if you will, are, you really have to go down to, and I'm not a chemistry major, so this is right. A lot of this has just been sort of absorption through the years, but potash itself is just a form of potassium, but it's a high level, or it's a high concentration of potassium. And polyhalite is a similar mineral ore, meaning all potassium-bearing basins, if you will, were at one point a seabed. Mm-hmm. That dried up, filled back up, dried up, filled back up. And that over, tens and 20 thousands of years then created this compacted layer of minerals. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that in potash you have potassium, but in polyhalite you have potassium, magnesium, calcium, and sulfur. Now, all of those are put on crops in some capacity today. And what we did through the early...
Separately as individual minerals, but not put together.
So they would be applied as what we'll call straights. So yes, individual minerals, or as a part of a blend. So you put everything in a hopper, you mix it all together, and you put it on the field. What we did in the very early days of Sirius is we went through a discovery process, and we realized that taking the polyhalite ore, in order to make it into digestible units for the farmers, what you had to do is you had to go through a very expensive process to break it all down. And then what you do is you have sort of three products left over. Well, then it turned out the farmers would then take those three products and reassemble them back into one product. So, the genius of what our board management came up with at that point in time was to say, but if we skipped over all of that, we lower our cost structure, and we provide the farmer something that they're going to ultimately want in that form factor. Now, the challenge became nobody else has done this before because polyhalite-bearing basins aren't readily available around the world. Potash is everywhere. It's really there's two large basins where 85% of the world's potash comes out of, and is controlled by 6 to 8 companies. But this was something that we felt was different and was going to allow people to differentiate themselves. And so we kind of just simplified the process and said, well, instead of buying 4 different forms of nutrient, you could buy one.
When you were researching this, there weren't significant competitors in a commercial space as far as the distribution of this product, right?
Correct.
I mean, that was part of your evaluation.
Yeah, and actually, so when you kind of look at my lineage with the company, started with running was the only project at the time that we were doing any exploration work on. Then moving to a decision by the board and by our chief executive to focus specifically on the commercialization of polyhalite. The interim step we did is I created a small satellite team, and we went around to all the known potassium-bearing basins around the globe, and we evaluated and said, okay, we know there's potash there, so we know there's potassium there. Is there polyhalite there? And if there is it of purity and depth and quality that we should be looking at? Because in the exploration game, it's all about who's first in line.
You find that north of England, that's your spot. We've got a good, pure version of the polyhalite. But that land is kind of in a sacred spot, right? That's what you...
Oh, yes.
So tell me about that in that process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there's a whole other wrinkle is that... so the thing about exploration is you have to create a project, or you have to drill where you think you have the best chances to actually grab whatever you're after. And that could be lithium, that could be gold, that could be oil and gas. Doesn't matter. I mean, you have to go where the actual resource is. And we have the benefit, or had the opportunity to actually create our project in the north of England in the national park. Now, that's different than the term national park is very different over in England than it is in the United States. As an example, people live in the national park, they farm it. There's commerce, they have logging operations, they have sour gas operations, they have mining operations. So the national parks there are looked at as protected areas, but also areas that can be utilized as a way to continue to grow the economy or to keep the economy running in a particular region. However, with that being said, we worked for 3 years to mitigate both the visual impacts that a mining operation could have, but then also the environmental impacts.
So you finally got the okay.
We did in June of 2015. We got our what we call the planning permission, or our planning permission from the North York Moors National Park, which allowed us to go in based on the mitigation strategies we put forward and all of the contributions that we will be putting into that local area. They gave us the permission and the opportunity to build this world-class infrastructure and world-class mine that will be employing thousands of people in an area that is very seasonally focused. So tourism is the main sort of economic driver in that particular region. And now we're talking about high-paying, technical jobs where families can come and they can stay.
So when you get the okay to get the mine going, give me an idea of spatially, like for the equipment and the drilling and how big of a swath of an area do you need to get that mine up and going? And then there's a second part of this, right, that you have to get that mineral from where it is to the coast, right?
Correct.
And how far is the coast from where you're at?
Correct. So we have, we do have a firm belief that at some point a textbook will most likely be written about this project because of the way that we've been able to incorporate current mining techniques and the opportunity to use what is naturally available in that particular region to minimize the impact. My point being is when you drive down the road, when we're in full production, when you drive down the road, you'll never know that mine actually exists. We're not an open pit mine, right? So those are the visually... That's
where my brain was. Yep, that it looked like that.
Yeah. So those are very, impactful to the environment, visually very unappealing. There isn't a waste product, right? So when people think potash mines, they think northern Saskatchewan where they take all the waste material and they pile it up on the surface and it's this big white mountain of basically table salt. We have none of that. In fact, the head frames, so the two big winders that actually bring the material up and bring people back down, they're sunken below surface. So all you will see is a couple of agricultural style buildings that look like farmhouses. And underneath all of that will be the inner workings. And then we actually take the mineral 37 kilometers from the mine site, so the shafts, and we take it 37 kilometers up to the port at Teesside.
So you have a tunnel that's 37 kilometers long.
It's a big conveyor belt. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Is it loud?
You never know it exists because it sits 350 meters below the surface.
Got it.
So
your mining process, if somebody's walking down the path in their nature preserve or whatever, you're not even going to know they're doing anything.
Never know it exists.
Got it.
Yep. And that was frankly part of the mitigation strategy that we built. And so we're using mining automation. We're using a lot of current techniques, not only for construction, but how when we're in operation, we will use all the advancements that are out there, because we have the benefit of building the mine in 2019, where you can take advantage of all the advancements of, equipment and infrastructure, and, we've been able to really maximize those opportunities. So, yeah, we're talking about an infrastructure and a mine life of 100 plus years. So you're talking about a very significant opportunity for the global landscape, and you're talking about a massive infrastructure that we have to build.
And your role when you start with this company is they come to you and say, hey, we think we got polyhalite here. We need somebody to go and sell contracts.
Well, the role that I've eventually grown into, yes, it was hey, this is the structure and the strategy of our business. We know we need to start building a customer base, and frankly, we need to start building a market for this product. Now, to your earlier point, there is a competitor that does sell and has sold the product in smaller scales on a commercial basis. But the market outside of Europe didn't truly exist until Sirius Minerals started coming along. And yeah, our chief executive, I happened to be over at the time in our office in Australia, as we had our investment relation group, we had some finance and some corporate development, and most of our board were Australian-based at the time. So I happened to be working out of that office, going back and forth, and I got a phone call from our chief executive who said, "Hey, this is where we're going to be taking the business. Is this something you'd like to get involved with and leverage your new market development, your sales background?" And I had been with the company a few years, and it was just an absolute opportunity that I could not pass up. And so I was on a plane probably 3 weeks later, and I relocated over there, and away we went, developing the commercial strategy for polyhalite, now called Poly4, for Sirius Minerals.
So late 2013, you're going to these fertilizer companies, trying to sell contracts for the minerals, and you say, hey, I've got this great product, you're going to love it, but we have to build this mine, and we have to make a tunnel that's 37 kilometers long, and it's going to take us, I don't know.
At that point, I suppose 5 years.
5 years. Mm-hmm. So 5 years from now, we'll have a product. You want to buy it? Right.
Oh, and let's not forget, we didn't actually have permission to dig it out of the ground yet.
Right.
And we hadn't really tested the product for multiple years. We'd started doing some agronomic trial work, but new product, very little money, didn't have planning permission, long-term sort of to get from start to finish. So yeah, there were a couple of one or two little items we had to get past.
So the first people that are signing up for you are signing up for something that doesn't exist, and you're a accounting major guy that has figured out how to do project management but has never farmed and is not a scientist and not a heavy in agronomics.
Now sitting here listening, having it played back, sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? But
yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
You obviously did a fantastic job because it happened. You got it, but it's amazing when you think about it, the amount of money that seems to be involved, and that it sounds like your CEO or the board comes to you and says, hey, can you create a worldwide market for what we think is going to be a good mineral and a profitable business for us? That's essentially what you're charged with, right?
There's a lot of truth to that statement. Still to this day, I work daily with our chief executive and what we call our strategy team, and continuing to see how we can maximize the market opportunity. Even still, a couple of years before we're in production. But yeah, in the early days, it was myself and the chief executive and maybe one or two other people that, we would go out to conferences and we would go out on sales calls and we would be met with different types of receptions. Some people on board and think, oh, this is great. This is going to be the next big thing. And then when you put a contract in front of them, they say, well, wait, hang on a second here. And other people saying, wow, you're going to really cut into our market share. Love the idea, love what you want to do, not going to do a thing to help you. And so, it was years of how do we find the right niche? How do we find the right player? How do we find the right way to distribute the product? How do we make sure we have the right test data? I'd love to sit here and say I was the brainchild behind it, but we're very fortunate to have some very, very talented people from across the globe. You look at people from our board, you look at our CFO and our CEO and even people like our general counsel and our construction people, they're very experienced in what they do. So we're very fortunate from that perspective. We've got some great scientists. We've got some great commercial people. You have to bring together talents from a lot of different groups and a lot of different regions around the world, and you have to get them marching in the same direction.
The other thing I was thinking about is, so you're trying to secure these contracts. The product, the fertilizer, is necessary and can be sold worldwide, right? And so you must be doing a lot of travel at this time, trying to get all these contracts. What is your schedule like?
Well, I set a personal record this year. When I did the numbers right before New Year's, I think I ended up at 612,000 miles flown in 2018.
How many people get to 600,000? That's a lot.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's something to brag about or if that's something to say, I don't know about that. But we've got a lot of road warriors within our organization. People are very amenable to the thing about the fertilizer space is it is an old school industry, and everything is expected to be done face to face. So sitting in the same room. If I tell you I'm going to deliver at this date, I'm going to deliver at this date. And if this is the price we agree on and the price spikes or it dips, we've already made an agreement and we're going to honor that agreement. So very, very ethical, above board industry, which is a lot of fun to be a part of. But it's expected to have relationships. And so, we've got members of the sales and marketing team scattered across the globe. We've got people in North America, Latin America, China, Southeast Asia, India.
I'm curious, with all the different countries that you've been to and all the different cultures that you've experienced, did you have any kind of cultural faux pas? Because, you start this business and maybe you're the first guy that's going out there doing the sales jobs before you have a whole team or maybe local people. Is there anything you did where you're kind of stuck your foot in your mouth, or maybe you were embarrassed? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I probably have more examples than I would have liked. It's been a bit, trial and error. But yeah, I think dealing with some of our Chinese customers in the early days, I hadn't experienced, the Chinese business culture in any way prior to Sirius, and they were actually the Chinese fertilizer buyers were some of our very first customers. And so when you go over there, things are very formal, they're very structured, and most importantly, they're very hierarchical. And so even whose hand you shake first, or if you're sitting down for a meal and you want to toast, right? You have to know the pecking order, if you will, and you have to follow that to a T.
So there's a table of people, and you have to know which person to go and shake the hands first?
Correct. And if you make the mistake of shaking the wrong person's hand first, or shaking or toasting the wrong person first, it's very passive aggressive, meaning it's absolutely frowned upon, and there will be an outcome not most likely to your favor in some way, shape, or form. And that could be anything. That can just be the relationship. It could be them not receiving you the next time that you come in. And so the little things like you go, and a lot of cultures very much, whether they're your customer or not, if you are in their environment, it is their job to make sure that everything is organized, the dinners, the transportation, everything, and they're your hosts. So I come from, a business development background where if you're a customer, typically you treat the customer. But yeah, I had a situation in the early days. We were at a celebratory dinner in China, and I went to go to toast the second in command, and I didn't quite get to that point because luckily our chief executive was able to grab me by the back of the shirt and say, why don't we just come and have a seat here? Because it goes with, the highest ranking official on both sides. And then there's actually...
Oh, he has to do it first anyway.
Yes. He has to do it first, but it goes even further. So those who are hosting you have to toast you first. Then the highest ranking official from your side has to toast, and then so on and so on and so on. And so
doctor,
I don't, exactly. And you don't, and you have to, and you can't, and then you can't go necessarily to being, second or the third guy, and then go to their second or third guy. You have to start in that rotation.
Holy cow. How long does this process take?
Luckily for me, I had the one time where I learned really, really quickly, and then was able to then help other people when we went on future trips. But yeah, I have a lot of those different things like you never would have thought about that.
That's a great experience.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Thinking kind of more personally now with your own professional development and your leadership, and sometimes leaders have whatever their mastermind groups or peer accountability groups and things like that. And I'm thinking of your company when you started. How many people are there? When you're starting way back when, like 1? 3?
Yeah, we had outside of the board of directors, I think we had 3, and I'm still there. So technically, I'm longest tenured employee, including our chief executive, who founded the project that we are now building into reality.
So, were you leaning on your own management, your CEO or CFO or the board, or were there other people that are doing project management that you knew of at different large corporations? I mean, in other words, I'm trying to figure out how when the task gets put in your hands, how you build that out or how you think about going about it. How does that develop?
Well, look, I've been very fortunate to work with some great people in my 20 plus years in the professional world. I do have a few what I would call professional mentors, and even there's a personal component to that. One of those individuals is actually is part of the institution where you and I first met at St. John's. Mm-hmm. It's somebody that I talk to about personal growth opportunities and professional growth opportunities. If I think if I'm having a challenge with whether it be a management challenge or a customer challenge, he's always been very kind to let me talk to him about what is the challenge, what are the opportunities.
That's a monk at St. John's, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Brother Isaac Connolly.
Okay.
We have a very interesting journey in the sense that I was on his floor as a freshman, and
Tommy Short or
no. Come on, Mary too, baby.
All right.
I came in as an 18-year-old, think you know everything, and then you go through 4 years of university and you realize you actually don't know anything. And the world is filled with opportunities, and he's an individual that has given me guidance and mentorship and been a friend. And we've continued to stay close, and I make it a point to go up to campus at least once a quarter to spend some time with him and reflect on the challenges in front of me and some of the things that maybe we've done great as a company or maybe some opportunities to change that in the future.
Does he have a business background?
Memory serves me, his degree is from Marquette, but I couldn't tell you what it actually is. But he's worked in all kinds of different areas of academic life. So whether it be the classroom or the actual administration, leadership and so he's seen a lot of things, and he's seen people that have come in thinking they know everything and then come back 20 years later and talk him through their experiences at St. John's and their experiences professionally. And look, we just we have a rapport, and it's been a really, really good friendship.
Cool. So, and you mentioned there was other professional mentors that you've had.
Yeah. There's a few people that I've worked with and for, or even have worked for me that I respect their opinions. They have a different way of problem solving, and so if I have, whether it be a management challenge or just an execution challenge, there's one or two individuals that come to mind that are always quick to take a phone call and let me use them as a sounding board. Mm-hmm. And then in the last couple of years, I've actually started to use a professional leadership coach as part of my tenure at Sirius Minerals, and it's somebody that I can call and I can drop an email to, and we make sure that when I'm in the UK, which is pretty frequently, her and I spend a few hours together where we just talk about what are the challenges that we're facing, how do we do things, or how can I become a better leader to my team, how can I become a better leader within the organization. We always start with kind of a question that has been the fundamental component to our training, which is what's best for the organization. And then when you set that as kind of the bedrock, that the decision tree becomes pretty easy after that.
And your leadership coach is a contracted person, but she's separate.
Yep, she's completely independent from the organization.
Yep. What did you find when you first started sitting down with her? Because I've had the opportunity to interview other business coaches as well, and I asked her, hey, what's the low-hanging fruit for the average person who comes in? You know what I mean? And in your case, what do you suppose? I assume, sometimes I think as men, you think you should know everything, or as maybe men and women, leaders, that I should know everything and I shouldn't need to have coaching because that's just admitting my own flaws.
Correct.
Was it hard to hire a coach, and how did you go through that? And maybe what did you find about yourself was kind of all right, here's the first thing I got to change. Thank God somebody else brought it to my attention.
Sure. I actually found it quite easy. One of the things that she has said to me on a consistent basis is that she finds me very open to feedback. Now, that's easy to say now in 2019 and at 44, but I can guarantee you that previous bosses would say that I probably wasn't as open to feedback as I maybe could have been or maybe should have been. But I am very much, hey, if I can be a better leader and I can be a better manager, then that's a success. And so she would say a couple of things, and she does on a pretty regular basis, is that I'm very open and receptive to feedback, and I'm very quick to try and implement certain things to try and change what's not working. And I hope ultimately, right, that provides an opportunity for anybody that I interface with the organization, or even in the industry, to help make me sort of a better leader, a better business person, and just try and generally get better.
Did she nudge you? Was she helping to, hey, we've had this conversation more than once, change it, that kind of thing,
I'm sure there's definitely part of that. I think sometimes she might get overwhelmed because I like to write a lot of things down. And so typically when I get my 2 or 3 hours with her, I come in and I've got a list of things that I'm like, okay, we need to talk about this scenario. Let's talk about this situation. Boy, I ran into this scenario and I made this decision. I wonder if it was the right thing.
Okay.
So I've been accused from time to time to be a bit over analytical. And I think, when I come in, it's a bit of a machine gun. And she's like, okay, so let's talk about all of this, but you got to prioritize. So let's talk about what are the things that we most need to focus on this particular. So I've gone from what I think is probably reluctant, not resistant, but reluctant to change, to maybe even a little bit more open to change than sometimes I should be, because at some point you just have to make a decision, and you have to live with that decision, and hopefully you've made the right one. And if you haven't, kind of log it and say, okay, the next time, if given this same opportunity with these same data points, maybe I look at a different solution. So she's helped me with that process to kind of understand, what is the reasoning, what is the rationale for why we're going to do this, or we're going to task a person with this, or we're going to bring in this person, or we're going to change the organization to do this.
So in interviewing a lot of different C-suite individuals, what I find, it varies from one person to the next, but I think often there's a defined window of which you're going to have your position, right? Yep. I think what some people think about is, when you look at a president, from what they physically look like from the first day that they started to 8 years later.
The Abraham Lincoln picture, yep.
And the stress and the anxiety that they wear on their shoulders, right? And obviously, you've got a significant financial investment, a large corporation that you're in charge of. You've been in charge of the growth, the sales, and the development of the organization. I suspect maybe there's a defined window for you. And if that's true, I guess my question is, if you take a small company and turn it into a global player in the fertilizer industry, what's the next thing that excites you at all?
It's an absolute fair question. One that I don't necessarily have a very firm answer to. I have a lot of ideas that kick around as to what will be the next thing. But frankly, for the next couple of years, we're so tunnel visioned on actually getting this through to success in production, because we've done some great things. We as a team, we've done some amazing things. And when I say that, I mean as the entire organization. In fact, we've done things that nobody thought we could do.
Right.
But we're not there yet. right? And so, we're on the 20, so we're in the red zone, but that's not across the goal line. So for the next 4 years, or not 4 years, for the foreseeable future, we're focused on getting this done. Now, with that being said, as a leader of the business, I have to try and ensure that there's continuity to the business, right? Because relations, personnel, all of that stuff needs to be consistent and be in place. So part of what I have to do is also have an eye on the future. And, I always use the term shelf life. And I think any executive has a shelf life in a particular organization. That might be small, that might be large, but at some point, the organization is best served to have additional thinking, a different way of thinking, a different way of leadership. And, I'm no different than anybody else that sits in an executive position. I think that is the smart thing to do, is to try and bring people along as part of the organization. I mean, I have people that work as part of my team that are more experienced in the fertilizer space. And I've got people that we're bringing along that are going to be fantastic executives in this space, or whatever they decide to do, should they decide to go down that path. So trying to mentor, build skill sets. I'm always sitting down with key people within the business unit to say, what's the next challenge we can take on? And how can you grow your career, and how can you become better in whatever it is you want to do? But that's my job as a leader, as part of the business, is to try and make sure that things are successful long after they've, they say your services are no longer needed.
Well, and so speaking of success, and even if you separated it from, your connection to Sirius Minerals, but maybe even more personally, if you look forward for the next, maybe 20 years of your career, or hopefully 40 years of your life or longer, how would you look back? What would have to happen, or how would you define it as successful?
So one of the things I think I've spent probably more time thinking about, certainly in the last couple of years, is making sure that I'm not just defined by whatever I achieve or whatever I do in my career. And I think probably in my 30s, that was probably, I let that be in my head probably much more than I should. And now when you get to sort of mid-40s, you want to you want to understand what your impact has been to the people that you've come in contact with. Maybe that's friends, maybe that's colleagues, business associates. Certainly one of the things that I will always take away from this journey that is Sirius Minerals is the friendships and the relationships that I've made. As a kid from Minnesota, growing up, going to school in Minnesota, being able to say that I've got, true friends all around the globe, people that if I just happen to land in the city, I could call and say, hey, I know it's short notice, but can you get together for some coffee? Can you get together for a beer? And, there are people that would say, oh, absolutely, drop what we're doing and we'll come visit. So that's impactful. That's something that I think about, that I'll take away. But I want to be able to sit and reflect back 5, 10, 20 years from now and know that I've had a positive impact in what we've contributed, what I've contributed. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Sirius Minerals, is because I truly believe that what we're doing ultimately is going to help farmers, population, humanity, if you will. And, we have, just generally speaking, when you hear the term mining and extractive industry, right, people automatically go to, they're going to ruin the environment. But, we're working on something that is actually going to change the agricultural space for the better. Yeah. We're bringing in a product that is better for the plants. It's better for the environment. It's less impactful. It does things that no other product has shown to do to this point. And that's pretty exciting to say, whether I'm here for another day, month, year, 10 years, boy, I had a part in that.
Great. I think we'll leave it there.
Sounds great.
I appreciate you coming in.
Oh, my pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, tons of great information. I just think a fantastic ride you've had here in the last handful of years, and I'm excited to see where it goes for you.
Thanks again.
You've been listening to JT Starzecki, Chief Marketing Officer at London-based Sirius Minerals. You can learn more about the work they do at SiriusMinerals.com. That's SIRIUS Minerals.com. On our next episode, we chat with Andrea Bolin, Director of Corporate Initiatives at Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. She shares with us the idea of the inverted pyramid and how that translates to her version of servant leadership.
Our mission is to help other tribal organizations, partners, and friends deliver on servant leadership in the workplace. Servant leadership is very simple. It's just to serve others.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.